Hello, welcome to this Paper 2 core vocabulary video. In this particular topic we're going to look at the food management and the challenge of food management. Now, as with all these videos, there is a worksheet available for you. You can print screen this, or as some students have been doing, come and get a copy from one of your teachers and work through it. My advice is attempt to define these words first on your own and then carry on watching the video and tick any you got right, correct any you got wrong. So, first of all, food demand. Food demand is ultimately how much food people want, and as you can see with this infographic, the amount of food is going to increase between now and 2050 by about 60%. So there's a bigger increase for food, demand for food across the world. If there's a food surplus, that means you have more food than's actually needed. So in the UK, generally there's a food surplus and you find that a lot of food is actually wasted. Food deficit or food insecurity. So if you're suffering from food insecurity, that means that you have not got a reliable, nutritious source of food for the remainder of the week or the remainder of the month. So there's the worry about food, and there's different levels of food insecurity. So you've got food security, which is in the UK, we're food secure, moderate to severe, so that's when there's some uncertainness, and severe food insecurity, that's when you lead into famine and illness and sometimes even death. Calorie intake, calories, how energy is measured in food, and an average healthy female should consume 2,000 and a healthy male should intake 2,500. Obviously some people exceed their calorie intake and that is why they put on weight. Food miles, the food that you eat has come from all around the world, and ultimately it's the distance food travels from where it's grown to the consumer's plate. So right from the farmer's field, like these bananas in Central America, across the Atlantic Ocean to a warehouse processing unit, to the supermarket, in the back of your car, to your plate in your home. Carbon footprint. Carbon footprint is the greenhouse emissions, so think carbon dioxide, methane, emitted from all of our actions. Now when we import food from another country with high amount of food miles, that will increase our carbon footprint. So demand for food is increasing our carbon footprint. Increasing food consumption, ultimately this is when the amount of calories people consume is getting higher, and this graph shows that in developed parts of the world, food consumption and calorie intake is increasing. Economic development, we use this in lots of different topics. I often say use a dollar sign and an arrow if you're dual codes in your exam papers, but it's ultimately a country getting richer in terms of standard of living and their GNI per capita, how much money they're earning. Rising population, so this is when the amount of births exceeds deaths, and as you can see there's this very steep rise in population. We're currently at about 8 billion people in the world, and this is expected to keep rising. Obviously, more people in the world, that's more mouths to feed. Climate is the average rainfall and temperature over a long period of time, usually about 30 years. In the summer, in August, in the UK, you would expect it to be warm and probably not rain. Okay, so that's the climate, what the weather is usually like at that time of the year. And this is a climate graph for the UK. Bars always show precipitation or rainfall in millimetres, and the line always shows temperature, no matter where the climate graph is for. Technology, so technology is machinery and equipment developed to make tasks easier. In the top, from the agribusiness in the UK, we have got this combine harvester, which is going to help speed up the food process. But not all technology has to be so advanced. In this photograph, we have got some appropriate technology or intermediate technology, and this is technology that can be used by people in LICs to speed up the farming process. This particular one takes the shells off coffee beans, okay, so it's going to speed up the farming process. Pests and diseases are a factor that can cause food insecurity. This is a swarm of locusts which will eat all the crops. And you can see this farmer here desperately trying to shoo them away, but there's about 1 billion of them. Chances are he's not going to be successful. Water stress, a bit similar to water deficit, is when there is an adequate supply of water. If we look at this choropleth map of the world, the red is where there is high water stress, and as you can see, many countries around the Tropic of Cancer are going to be suffering from water stress. Now the USA may well suffer from water stress, but because they're a HIC, they're going to have advanced water transfer schemes to make sure the water gets from where it's needed, basically. So where precipitation happens to where the demand is. Conflict, we often think of conflict as war. This is a photograph taken from Ukraine due to the crisis that's currently happening there. And one impact of the war is that the enemy, the Russians, have put mines on the farmers' field, because this will stop the farmers harvesting the crops. No crops, no food, hungry fighters can't win a war. So conflict can cause food insecurity. Poverty, being extremely poor. Ultimately, you've not got any money to buy food, and this is especially a problem in LICs when prices rise. Famine, this is the actual definition you would need for the exam, is a widespread, serious and often fatal food shortage. Okay, so this could be a place, a region, or an entire country. Undernutrition, so this is when you may well be full, but you are not getting the right nutrients in your food. Okay, so you could eat rice 3 times a day and not be hungry, but you would still be undernourished. And this can lead to a lack of immunity, which increases the risk of disease. If you get a disease, you're going to be poorly. Again, this is an impact of food insecurity. Soil erosion, this is when the topsoil is eroded away. This is a brilliant picture. You can see the nutritious topsoil here, which you can grow crops in, whereas this sandy desert-like soil at the bottom is going to be no good for growing crops. And over-farming on marginal land can cause an increase in soil erosion. Rising prices, if there's a shortage of something and the demand rises, the prices will go up. If prices grow up, this can lead to social unrest and food riots because people can't afford food. Social unrest, so just mentioning food riots, ultimately people get angry because they're hungry. They get together in the streets and start protesting. The sad thing is, governments and police and even the armed forces try and calm these situations down, and people can end up injured or even killed. Increasing food supply then, so there's lots of different strategies you can do to increase food supply. This is an irrigation system which is taking place in Bangladesh to water the crops. So what is irrigation then? It is the artificial watering of the land. Now these can be small scale drip irrigation systems like this one in this lovely image here, or it can cross multiple countries such as the Indus Basin irrigation system, artificial watering of the land. The next one is aeroponics. As you can see, there's no soil, the roots of the crops are dangling, and this water is nutrient rich. So ultimately the plants get all their nutrients from this mist here. Hydroponics, still no soil needed, but instead of the roots being sprayed, they are dangled in water, sometimes done with gravel, and all the nutrients the plants need will be in there, so no soil is needed. The New Green Revolution. So the New Green Revolution is a way of increasing crop yields. It includes intensive farming, but not affecting the environment. If you look here, these hills have been cut into, and we call this terracing. So now that hill is basically a farmer's crop field. That is an example of working with the environment, the New Green Revolution. Biotechnology, it's genetic modification. So for example, you could get the genetics of crops and make them more drought resistant. So you could grow these crops in areas with low precipitation, increase food supply. Large-scale agricultural development, we need to know an example of a large-scale agricultural development, and we use IBIS the Indus Basin irrigation system. As you can see, it must be pretty big because it crosses both Pakistan and India, and it's a series of dams and canals like this that divert water to farmers' fields. Now, this has increased crop yields by up to 150%. However, some farmers upstream take an unfair share of the water, which is a little bit of a challenge. Sustainable food supplies. So, sustainable means providing for people now without damaging the environment for future generations. And there are several ways we can do this in terms of food. Organic farming is farming without using machinery and no nasty chemicals or pesticides. The problem with this is it can cost a lot more to do this type of farming, so prices are higher. Permaculture. Now, permaculture is the word permanent, is permanent farming in an area, and it tries to work with the natural environment. So, for example, they are collecting the rainwater in these tubs to water the crops. All right, so minimal impact on the environment. Urban farming, brilliant idea. Space in cities is used to grow crops. This is going to bring jobs, it brings communities together because they can work on projects, and also wildlife is attracted to these urban farming sites. Sustainable fish. So a lot of oceans are overfished. Now ultimately, if you take away too many fish, they can't have babies and replenish themselves. So the Marine Stewardship Council, which is this organisation here, helps to monitor fishing, similar to what happens in the Barents Sea around Svalbard, where Russia and Norway monitor fishing in the Barents Sea. Sustainable meat. Similar to the fishing, and it's ultimately having smaller scale farms with free range animals that can roam around and have a nice life. Seasonal food consumption. If you want to eat strawberries on Christmas Day, you can, but that's going to increase food miles and it's going to give you a bigger carbon footprint because that food has got to have been imported, chilled in a freezer somewhere or a chiller. More CO2 is being released. If we eat these foods when they are in season, we can reduce carbon footprint and reduce damage to the environment. Reduce waste. A bit of a horrible statistic, 32% of food is lost or wasted per year. Ways we can reduce that is by processing food, so giving it a longer shelf life, maybe equivalent to putting a fish in a tin, that would be processing it. Or sell-by dates, we could have a more sensible approach. So even though it should be sold by Wednesday, the food might still be edible for a week later. So have a more sensible approach to that. Finally, a local scheme to increase sustainable food supplies. So rather than the large-scale system in India and Pakistan, we're looking at a more of a bottom-up sustainable approach, and we use the sand dams in Makueni County in Kenya. Local materials are used, so it's intermediate technology. They build a dam, the sand and water collects behind it, and they pump the water out. And this enables farmers to water their crops, irrigate their crops, and also improve sanitation, so it is good for development more generally, improving life expectancy. Okay, so that's the end of the video. Again, here is a copy of the sheet. Learn these words, you will do fabulous in your exam.